Welcome to Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer, the podcast that will increase your enjoyment of craft beer, or do you say local beer, and the people who make it. We have traveled to the Westtown neighborhood of Chicago to go from grain to glass with Cameron Compton and Timothy Ficken of Midwest Coast Brewing Company. We're going to touch on a beer myth, and as always, to share the stories that make each brewer unique. I am beer drinker and hellraiser Brian Noonan, and my opinions are, for good reason, strictly my own. Behind the camera is our executive producer, Cody Goff. And with me, as always, is the high priestess of hops, the matriarch of malts, the femme fatale of fermentation, the siren of suds, the regent of remote podcasting. She's the co-owner of Exit Strategy Brewing Company, Katherine Vallow. Hello, Katherine.
It's such a lovely and wonderfully long introduction. Hey, buddies. Plural, everybody. Also, are we sure it's Ficken and not Flicken?
I know you.
Are we sure?
You love to make sure that I don't know what my last name is. So thanks.
I do because the whole time that I've known you, I have added an L to your last name.
Yeah.
It does not belong there, and now it's such a habit for me to mispronounce your last name. It's just like a joke in my house. Not a cruel joke in my house. It's just a fun joke in my house.
Listen, Katherine Vallow, you don't mess with somebody's last name. That's not nice.
Listen, I'm impermeable. I got a French last name that no one can say. I'm fine.
All right. Gentlemen, welcome. It's, as I mentioned, Cameron Compton is the owner and brewer here at Midwest Coast Brewing Company. Timothy Ficken is the brewery manager, brewer, the best beard in the business. You are the major domo to Cam. You're his right-hand man. So we are happy you guys are here. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
We usually start with a myth because I'm not a brewer. I don't claim to be. I'm a guy who's been drinking beer since I was 9. That's not a flex. But I grew up, as I'm sure you guys did, you hear a lot of myths about beer. And when you're not in the business, you tend to believe them. Well, Katherine likes to see if we can debunk those myths with your help. So, Katherine, what do you got for us today?
So today's is just something I read a quick little quip on this, and it's something that I used to hear behind the bar quite frequently, and it was that there are like girl beers and man beers, and it makes my blood boil for a lot of reasons. The first is we have girl versus man when it should just be woman versus man, or wait, even better, we don't actually gender beers. So the myth today is that there are these segments of beers, right? That there's like girly beers and then there's man beers. It's not going to take a whole lot to debunk this. Beer is beer and people enjoy, and human people enjoy beer.
But what if I want a dainty beer?
And then I want to come back to the thing that I am drinking. Go ahead.
Go on.
I want an example of a man beer.
Yeah, I would too. What's a man beer?
Oh, everyone was like, IPAs, stouts, dark beers, imperials. And you're like, this is ridiculous.
Oh, no.
Ladies drink lagers and fruit beers.
Like, I'm drinking an IPA. Does that make me also a man?
We're alphas. We're alpha beer drinkers.
Light lager.
Okay. All right. Y'all are ridiculous. I have a sour with blood orange and Fresno chilies in it that's kind of burning the back of my throat a whole lot. So I don't know what that makes me, a lady or not a lady. But I think the idea of like girls drink light beers and lagers and low-cal beers and like beers with fruit in them is ridiculous. And I don't want to steal any thunder by giving anything away, but I know because I follow Midwest Coast on the socials and because I know one of those guys pretty well, Midwest Coast just released a beer with some fruit in it that sounds delicious, and I'm waiting for my shipment to arrive.
I've never heard this before. I only think, seltzers are girly. And that's right. That's my opinion. Come at me, seltzer people.
It's weird to gender a beverage and be like, well, that's only for ladies. And you're like, that's ridiculous. It's for human consumption.
I don't think we see that typically too much here. I will say I personally commit a very serious sin in the brewing industry is that I cannot stand bourbon barrel-aged stouts. And I just...
Well, Katherine says they all taste like soy sauce. After a couple sips.
Especially when you're drinking a lot of them.
Yeah.
After 3 sips, they all taste like soy sauce.
I'm going to use that now on because it sounds better than me just saying like, oh, I don't like them. But if I have
They
a good
all
reason.
they all get a weird
Yeah.
they get a weird umami soy thing after like through every time I go to Fobab, I'm like, okay, and I'm on to soy. Find me
Yeah.
the sour room.
Yeah, there's some of them I really enjoy. Some it's like
Stop.
Fobab has a lot of one sip and
You know,
toss.
you don't have to share with me.
Yeah. I don't think we've all the tickets we've gotten. I don't think you've gone once.
To Fobab?
Yeah.
No. It'd be wasted on me.
Yeah.
Like, you guys can go have a good time, enjoy the stuff that you guys
Right.
like. And me, it's like,
You'd be hanging out in the Brewers section where they got the High Life.
right, yeah.
Hang out.
In which case, why am I
There you go.
taking somebody's ticket?
So I guess, Catherine,
You would just be
you're-
drinking a lot of girl beers
Oh,
because
yeah.
they're like light
Yeah,
beers.
there you go.
Yeah,
I don't know. You may be the only person who's ever had this happen, Catherine, but I think we've busted that myth.
Yeah, I don't think that's something we see much of here.
Even when we're talking about like beers for the tap room, because we try to make sure that we have a beer for everybody. But I don't think once we've ever said we got to make sure we have a beer for the ladies. It's just, it's just like we want to make sure we have styles across the board. And so we make sure we have, there's a million different styles of IPAs nowadays. So we have probably more IPAs than other things, but we kind of go
But you
through.
guys have
we're
always
like,
had a
we
really
need
balanced portfolio. And I think it's
Yeah.
one of those things where if you go into something being like, well, I got to make sure that like my moms can drink this, like that, again, it's exclusionary, which is terrible. And it is just ridiculous because we've seen the demographic of beer change in such a way too that you're not really looking at the segment of beer drinker. It's just a beer drinker now. You're not like, well, what are my women consuming? What are my men consuming? What are my gender neutrals consuming? Like, stupid. It's human people consuming a product of
So
age humans.
I've seen dudes drink the fruited sours. I've seen women drink the heavy IPAs. We have a couple of our Mug Club members, ladies, that's all they drink is our vaguely stylish West Coast IPA.
Yep.
And if you're going to say that that's a manly beer, I'm going to tell you that I got two
Yeah.
women that'll fight you about it.
Nice. Let's do that in the next episode.
Yeah.
So you're never going
Coming
to
up
put up a
next on a
section
special
on your
episode.
menu downstairs that says for the ladies.
No. It could be an interesting social experiment, but I'm not really interested in seeing
No, it's
The
probably
results?
not.
what happens.
Yeah, you don't want half
Yeah.
your customer base to just
Yeah.
go, screw these guys.
Yeah,
We're outta
no.
here. All right, so that myth is busted.
Definitely.
It was a myth that made me very angry, and now we have shattered it, which is great.
Yeah.
All right, good. That means we can reintroduce our guests. This is very exciting. I've been to this brewery before. I've brought my dog. I've had a good time. We are at Midwest Coast Brewing at 2137 West Walnut Street in the Westtown neighborhood of Chicago. MidwestCoastBrewing.com is the website, and the man behind it all, Cameron Compton, is the owner and brewer, and Timothy Ficken is, and I'm going to say it correctly.
Yeah.
I'm not like my co-host who wants to mock your name, which I think is just horrible.
I mean, that's the whole family
Calm
mocks me, and I just mock
down.
them back. So it's
don't
kind of
know.
the friendship.
I get it. Well, Timothy is the brewery manager. Now, okay, a lot of these questions will be for both of you because Timothy, you've been here since things started in 2019 too,
Yep.
right? Okay, and Cam, obviously you were here because you opened the place. So this is good. First of all, before we get into the history of Midwest Coast and what brought you guys together, how did you get into beer? We'll start with Cameron.
Yeah, so I would say, I got into beer, at least craft beer, right out of college. Not in college. I remember at the time getting like a couple craftier 6-packs that I don't even remember what they were back when I was in college and thought they were all just awful.
Okay.
I had no idea what I was getting into. And then quite literally the only way I got into craft beer was once graduated. My roommate and I at the time, we were living in Northern California. We're quite literally just looking for a weekend hobby. And we decided to try home brewing. There was a shop down the street.
Okay.
And we're just like, sure, that sounds like a good Saturday afternoon activity. And we can probably drink beer while we're doing it.
Yeah.
So we got it. We made it. And we got hooked immediately. And just after, one batch, we were all of a sudden, this was Northern California in 2010. So the craft beer scene, to us, it seemed like Anchor,
Okay.
RIP,
sure.
but maybe not RIP,
Right.
seemed like this tiny little craft. It's like, oh, this is something. It's like, it's brewer's been around for over 100 years. Like, this is not like a crafty thing. And yeah, we just started exploring the market there. Sierra Nevada was, not new at the time, but it was one of the only craft breweries, that we really could find, at least in those days, until we really started to get into it. And then we started to learn all about this beer scene down in San Diego, and that was trickling its way north into Northern California. We could find some beers from some breweries down there. And
was it always IPAs at the beginning?
Our first, that's kind of what got me hooked, was like the West Coast IPA. Was like, this is something different that I've never tasted before, and I like it. And it's weird, when you have your first one, it's like, this is not like any beer I've ever tasted before. But then it was just trying to explore all those West Coast IPAs at the time, and we were hooked.
And so home brewing led to down the road. I mean, we'll take a few jumps, but home brewing led to this.
Yeah.
All right, Timothy. Same question. How did you come to this life?
A little earlier, but as most of us are, home brewing. My dad was a big craft beer drinker even when I was growing up, so like I knew more about craft beer than I think most of his friends did.
Really?
I just because I was interested in what my dad was doing, because everybody else, I knew what everybody else was drinking. I knew what my high school friends were drinking, and then my dad's drinking all this different stuff. And this is kind of mid to late 2000s. And then I went to college, made friends with a buddy who was a couple years older than me, and he was homebrewing. And then so I just kind of started doing it with him. Had a great time. Just would pop over on Saturdays, or neither of us had class on I think it was a Wednesdays, and so we'd brew on a Wednesday and just midweek, and I could drink while doing homework and doing the homebrew thing. And that's kind of how I got into it.
Nice.
Quite opposite though. IPAs were not it.
I was going to say, because Cameron was Northern California. That's IPAs.
Yeah,
you were in Alabama.
Yeah.
Moonshine-based beer. What'd you have down there?
Yeah. No, not quite. Definitely moonshine. But so that was back when, 2012, 2016, that kind of realm was when the South and I think the East Coast was trying to copy that West Coast IPA phase, when that got really popular. But back then, I kind of want to go back and be like, was it I was just new to beer, or were the beers just like not as good as they are now? Because back then it just was like bitter bombs.
Okay.
But that was like the IBU wars of like everything's got to be over 100 IBUs, and I'll never forget, like, I had a bunch of friends that were like, yeah, well, IPAs. I'm like, pale ales, ambers, browns. Like, pale ales were kind of how I got into IPAs. And it wasn't until really, I went in 2016, went to California, went to Russian River, had Pliny, and was like, oh, is this what IPAs are? Because if I can get behind that, like, that's good. And I think the shitting on the Southeast a little bit too much, but they had started to get a little better as time went on, and I think my palate got changed a little bit along with it too. We started getting away from the 100+ IBU West Coast IPAs, because I don't know if maybe people didn't know how to brew them, or just they're trying to figure it out. Kind of brings me back to also when like hazies got popular. Nobody really knew how to brew them, and so it's just a bunch of people trying to figure it out. But eventually, I think the Southeast got great beer now, and then. But yeah, that's kind of, I was always a amber brown ale. That was always my realm.
Well, I read that about you, and I want to ask you about that. But first, there were different. So we talked about California and the IPAs, and Alabama and the different kinds. Another difference is, Cameron, you went into a different line of work before you came and founded Midwest Coast.
Right.
And Timothy, you started working at breweries. Is that correct? Or did you do so? Well, I know we have this in common. I know you were a substitute teacher, as was I.
Yes.
So any similarities between teaching kids and brewing?
No.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. No, not.
Got to be drunk
Hang
for
on
both.
a minute.
Yeah, you want to be. You'd like to be.
What?
You didn't know that?
No.
This is why I'm in charge of research.
I used to. I was a swim coach growing up. I wanted to get into teaching, getting out of college. But I didn't have like a education degree, and so I was
gonna say I didn't have an education. That doesn't bode well for Alabama.
That's probably not what you want teaching your kids. But
that's how I've always understood Alabama.
Yeah, you're not far off.
As a Notre Dame, alum. All right, here we go.
Okay,
yeah, so
this is good for me to know, and I'm sorry that it took us this long to get here.
I
But it's
mean,
fine.
we don't
We're
have,
here
neither
now.
of us have kids, so you wouldn't exactly know that.
I mean,
I'm good
Catherine,
with
I knew about the
kids.
swim coaching. I'm not 100% sure I knew about the substitute teaching either.
Yeah.
This
Okay,
is
all
why
right. You know what?
this
Then
is
thank
why
you for
I do
dropping
the
this truth
research.
bomb on us.
Yeah.
I'm like the Mike Wallace of beer podcasts.
Yeah.
I find
It's
the
been
hidden
said before.
gems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of time. Many
Yeah.
people are
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
it, Cameron. I'm
Yeah.
not going to lie to you. All right.
One
so what
person
were
is
you
saying
doing when you got out? We know Timothy was going to
Yeah.
teach and stuff. And what were you doing before you I don't know, lost your mind and said, I want to open a brewery?
Yeah. So, after the first couple batches, again, I just thought it was going to be a hobby. And then the guy I brewed with, who actually coincidentally last week, who I probably brewed my first 50 homebrew batches with, he got to come and join me for a brew here for the first
nice.
time, which was really fun. But during all those early homebrew days, it was just like, someday, maybe that type of thing, retirement job. Was in the military, and then went straight out of that into tech world back in Northern California again. But that whole time, never having left California, and was there during, when I started getting into beer, like I said, I thought I was discovering all these, great IPAs and all this sort of stuff. Like the Northern California beer scene was like pretty well established. But during the time that I was in the Navy and then my early days out of there, craft beer exploded nationwide. Like Tim said, went into the Southeast. Like, I had a ton of friends here in Chicago that I'd come visit all the time, and all the breweries, were blowing up then, Rev and Half Acre and everything like that. And it's like Chicago's got great beer, Southeast got like all of a sudden the whole country had great beer. So yeah, I was just, working kind of a normal, tech job, and finally decided when I was getting ready to leave the company that I was at that my now wife, then girlfriend, and still older sister were just like, you know what, we're tired of hearing about maybe someday you want to start a craft brewery.
Okay.
So let's either do it or please shut up about it.
Why the move then from Northern California to here?
Yeah. So we were living in San Francisco at the time, and it basically would have been impossible to really try and open a brewery in San Francisco.
Yeah,
not impossible. Yeah, not impossible, of course, but like it just seemed like a bridge too far. Yeah. Other than my time in college, I lived in California my entire life, other than some stuff in the military, and then college, and then my wife Susie had lived in California her entire life, and we were both interested in living somewhere else. So we started looking around the country, what looks like a place that A, we want to live, and B, looks like it's got a good burgeoning craft beer scene. And when we were really first talking about this was like 2015, 2016. And, Chicago was on its ascendancy to like being what now I think is, at least the best craft beer big city in the country.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You think so? I mean, as far as the big cities go, no question.
There's so many.
Yeah.
There's so many good ones.
So many good ones. Yeah. So we had a lot of friends here, and we love Chicago, and we just decided this was the place to be.
Now you opened it with your sister, which is a story we have not heard before.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? Well, there's been a few siblings, right, Catherine, that have opened breweries.
Yeah, no, we've had a couple different siblings.
Yeah, a couple different siblings. How is it working with your sister?
I mean, mostly great. Like, I mean, we get along really well.
Nice.
It's interesting because we're 4.5 years apart. So, and she's older. Because we're that far apart, we lived like completely different lives growing up.
Yeah.
Like it's, when she was in high school, she didn't want to talk to her junior high younger brother.
Sure.
That would have been social suicide.
Yeah.
So we didn't really we lived these kind of separate lives until all of a sudden I went to college and she was getting out of college, and all of a sudden we became like friends.
Yeah.
So like we never really had like a sibling relationship. I mean, we do obviously, but we're just like became friends all of a sudden.
That's
as
cool.
Adults, and her strengths definitely complement my weaknesses. She's much more like numbers driven.
Okay.
She's got a finance brain. That's her background. And when it comes to like, our brewery, our tap room is visually and aesthetically very pleasing.
Yeah, it's very
and that's
nice.
definitely a weakness of mine as well. So she helped out. She's got a great eye for that sort of thing. She and my wife, Susie, did a great job picking everything out and helping design this place. So
It's very nice.
it's been a great working relationship.
Laney's the best. We love Laney. We wish she was around more.
Yeah, she
Every
does
time-
live in
There you go.
Virginia now.
Oh,
so,
does she? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we miss you, Laney.
Yeah.
All right. So how did you guys come to meet? Because the brewery, as I said, Midwest Coast Brewing, opened in 2019. Timothy, you started in 2019. How does this partnership, the working relationship, come to be?
I mean, I was working at another brewery and wanted to make a change, see if I could make some more money. I kind of like the idea of moving to a startup. Just a little more freedom, a little more like boots on the ground. I thought I could offer some help to that. And I mean, I applied. I just was kind of looking around and found it. I mean, and then I
I don't even
showed
remember
up.
where did you see the job posting? I don't even remember
Actually,
where we posted.
No, I didn't. Our original GM, who I also worked with at the time, she had told me, she's like, "You're also looking to move, right?" I was like, "Yeah, like kind of, yeah." And she was like, "This place that I'm looking at, I just applied to be the GM." She's like, "They're looking for the assistant brewer," and I was like, "Let's see how that goes." So sent my application in, and
we interviewed Tim, and Tim was employee number 1. He was the very first person to start here.
Did you get a plaque or something?
You want a plaque?
The 5-year plaque. I just hit 5 years.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right, we should talk plaque.
Just a little plaque.
Yeah.
5-year
Let's talk
plaque.
plaque.
Yeah, we should talk plaque. Yeah.
Talk plaques.
I don't need a plaque. Please don't make a plaque. That's
now you
super
have to.
ostentatious.
You
Very
can't
like,
be- That's what you want to do. I'm not going to stop you, but
I mean, business has been good up here, man. Like
Yeah.
we can afford a nice plaque for you.
So he was the first guy
Yeah.
hired. What was it about? Because I know when you were opening in a lot of interviews, you said, "Well, we're going to go back to traditional styles." And we know from what you've said, you're an IPA guy.
I am an IPA guy. I would say that's what got me into craft beer. But when I started really exploring over the next few years, I became a very classic styles person, which is what I am still.
And is that what drew Tim to you? What did he bring something that you?
I mean, first off, he was definitely the most qualified person we talked to, far and away. He'd been in beer. I mean, at that point, you were young. I mean, you're still young.
I mean, I was 25.
Yeah, you're young, but you'd been in beer
2 years, 2.5.
Yeah, but it's
I would have said
it's not that
6.
many years, but like it's all you knew, and you knew the industry really well. You knew the processing really well, which again, I knew how to brew, but as far as all the cellar work and stuff like that, definitely another hole in my game still 5 years later. So that was definitely a skill set we needed, and he was young, he was hungry, he was eager to learn, he was eager to be a part of something. It was just an obvious good fit. Yeah.
Well, and I brought up the statement about the classic styles because Midwest Coast has expanded, and your portfolio is now you've got, as you said, beer for everyone. Was that listening to patrons? Was it forecasting trends? Was it you guys going, "Hey, here's a style I want to try"? Combination of both, all?
I mean, I know that like when we started, Cam had a few beers that he definitely wanted to bring in from his portfolio of home brewing. Some of which are still around. Westtown Brown, which has gone through a lot of iterations, but that was an original beer.
Westtown's probably the closest to the original recipe of anything that we still make.
Yeah.
But
So there's that. I mean, realistically, that Elevator to Nowhere and Volkslager were all, I think, original beers of yours. We had a few others that
Elevator was a little different
Flash
in the
in the
hop
pan.
selection,
Yeah.
but we also opened, another thing you learn when you open a business, what becomes your biggest problems were what you never anticipated.
Right.
And, we started making beer in July?
July.
Yeah, it's July.
Yeah.
July of 2019 was not a good time to try and source a lot of hops like Citra and Mosaic and stuff like that. Everything was on contract, and all of a sudden it's like I knew about hop contracts, but I didn't really know that like.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah, this is
They're
a
tough,
fucking
is what they are.
They're
It's a
brutal
doozy.
is what
It's
they
a
are.
doozy.
they're
so-
brutal is what they are. So essentially, you have to forecast several years of your production in advance because hops take a long time to mature. The actual plant takes a long time to mature, and the growers need to have some idea of what varietals to plant, and what varietals to cultivate as time goes on and stuff like that. So it's like, hey, this was 2019. We're looking at a hop contract, and they're like, hey, do you guys know how much of this beer you're going to be making in 2024? It's like,
I don't even know what beers we're making.
I don't even know if we're going to be around in 2024.
That's part of it, right? With like hop contracts and contracting. And you're like, yes, I would love to predict, especially like right now in beer, we've seen this weird bell curve, right? Where everybody was like, we were higher alcohols, we were all super happy, we were all of these things. And now the past year or so, we're just trending down, right? Into lower ABVs, and we're back into lagering, and we're back into some of these more classic styles. No one could have predicted this.
Well,
so you could be sitting on hops. You could either have your hop contract run out, or you could be sitting on them from your contracted allotment and be like, great, what do I do with all these bags of Citra? Because Citra was so hot that one time, and now I have so much Citra.
I mean, you could set your clock to it every year. There's an email. You guys remember this? Like, there's a guild email that goes out every year from several breweries. Like, we're all trying to sell excess hops because
like everyone is trying to sell. Like, I'm sitting on pallets and pallets and pallets of this one, and you're like, cool,
right? Because in 2019 it was huge, and we needed to contract it.
Well, all right. So
I'll tell you what, we ended up doing a beer once with leftover contract hops, because we were like, I think it was actually how one of the hazies was born, because it was like, just kitchen sink this.
Yeah,
these are like, just, we got a kitchen sink everything that's in here.
Absolutely.
Like, just throw it in, clean out the fridge day for hops.
Our hazies, a lot of our hazies are like, we contracted these hops because they were popular, and they still are, but now we need to start making hazies with these hops in them. And we thought one elevator to somewhere we thought was going to be a big beer for us, canning and stuff. And so we had contracted a bunch of hops out. And I think it's also a matter of like how much you think you're going to grow, because we also didn't even know when we were going to start canning.
Yeah.
And so like all of a sudden we started canning, and we're like, we had these big plans for cans and the beers we were going to can. So we're like, all right, we need to up our hop contracts for those beers. A couple of those beers didn't work out in cans, just didn't do well for one reason or another.
Oops.
And then right now it's like, now I'm like, I do a lot of the hot contracts now, and I'm talking to our reps, and I'm like, can we drop a couple of these bags? And they're like, we can drop some of them. And they're like, we can drop 4 bags of hops. I'm like, that's really nothing.
4?
Can we do different hops? Can I swap hops? They're like, only certain hops. I'm like, dang it.
Yeah,
so it's just it's a headache, but but if you don't do it to a point, you're screwed and you can't source anything.
Okay. So this all started when we were talking about some of the
just
early
email
hazies.
the guild.
Yeah, right. Well, now we know.
I want to follow up on this, because not only in 2019 were you trying to figure out what beer you were going to brew in 2024, the world was about to change, and I'm sure your hop contracts changed with it. We're going to take a quick break. This is our beer break. So when we come back with Cameron Compton and Timothy Ficken from Midwest Coast Brewing in the Westtown neighborhood of Chicago, we're going to have a dealer's choice. So whatever beer you guys want to showcase, we're going to have that. I want to follow up with that. And then I have an IPA style that you guys do that I was not familiar with. I drank it last time I was here. I'm drinking it today, but I still don't know the difference. Okay. So we're going to talk about English IPAs.
All right.
Because that's something we have never talked about before, and we'll do all that in just a minute when we come back with another beer on Crafty Brewers. This is where Cody gets very, very creative with his video editing. All right, we are back. Timothy Ficken is here. He's the brewery manager. Cameron Compton is the owner and the brewer. We're at Midwest Coast Brewing in the Westtown area of Chicago. What is Westtown, you may ask? Well, how about 2137 West Walnut Street in Chicago? A few-minute walk from the United Center. It's a great area, and we're going to showcase a beer. But first, Cameron, I must ask about our beautiful mascot, Maverick. Who was Maverick? Maverick looks like he's having a good time on the glass. Did he have a good time?
He was. That was the dog that my sister Lainey and I had growing up, and he was a big dumb idiot of a lab. Like labs can go one extreme or the other. Right. They're seeing eye dogs and they're helping people cross the street and they're shopping at Target, or there like Mav.
They're just loads
And
of fun.
he was just a big dumb idiot, and but he was the best. He never had a bad day.
Very nice.
Yeah, never had a bad day.
Well, and one of the things that Midwest Coast is known for, and we're going to get to, you guys are like the biggest dog-friendly place around. Every time I've been here, there's a million dogs.
Yeah.
My dog came in and just laid out. He was having a grand old time.
We are very dog-friendly. We do a lot of work with various shelters around the city, dog rescues, that sort of thing. We're just big dog people, and we want to partner up with other people who are.
It's very cool. And if you come, you're a little behind the scenes. If you get a flight, just get a flight. I'm not going to tell you why you should get a flight.
Get a
Just
flight.
Get a flight.
I agree.
It'll
Get a flight.
be, you'll be pleasantly surprised. Get a flight. Okay, before we went to break, I was asking you guys about your there's a lot of IPAs here at Midwest Coast. And I know East Coast, I know West Coast IPAs, I know double dry hop, I know hazies, I know, oh man, I've heard it all. I had never heard of an English style IPA, and that's what we're sampling right here. What is this beer, and what is an English IPA?
Well, do we want to dive into why it's called an English Pale Ale, or do we just? I mean, so this is an interesting beer. We can talk about English IPAs too, but we'll just talk about this beer for. Well,
all right.
yes and no.
Okay. Well,
so
first, what is this beer? What is
this
it
is
called?
an English sporting beer. This is our English Pale Ale. This is our award-winning. We won an award in I think it was 2020
GABF,
bronze ale or bronze medal JBF.
Nice.
One in the category of ESB. So technically, the style that we kind of brewed it after is an ESB.
And an ESB is a
extra special bitter.
okay.
What we found, funny enough, this is actually the first beer Cam and I collabed on.
Yes,
Oh, wow.
recipe-wise. Yeah.
So we had Cam's beers that we scaled up from his homebrew days. There's about 6 of them. We're like, we got at the time we had 12 taps downstairs. We're like, what else are we gonna make? He's like, well, what do you want? He's like, what do you want? And I was like, I want an ESB. It's my favorite style. I've never made one. Actually, just because like once I got into into beer, I wasn't homebrewing anymore.
Okay.
But I just had never made that style. And I was like, let's make one of those. So it's first recipe we collabed on. I think it was like the second or third beer we made.
In the first 5 for sure. Yeah.
And we have not changed the recipe since.
Nope.
But what we found was when it started to go out in distribution, a lot of our buyers really liked it. A lot of local buyers really liked the beer. But they're having a lot of issues selling the style because ESB stands for extra special bitter. People hear the word bitter and they're like, nope, don't want it. Funny enough, English Pale Ale, ESB, very similar beers. English Pale is actually probably a little bit hoppier version of an ESB.
Really?
They're not too far off.
Yeah, they're a little different.
They're a little different, but this one hurts me because then we were like, everyone liked the beer when they drink it, but people weren't ordering it. And so we kind of made an executive decision. We're like, see if we call it English Pale Ale if more people drink it. And they did. And we rebranded the name before we started canning it. I don't remember what it was even called before. But one of my things was like, well, we rebrand it. We need to acronym it to stand for ESB. So that's where English sporting beer comes from.
Okay.
So you'll hear us call it ESB, English Pale. Like I said, we won the award for an ESB.
It's an incredible beer. And I can confidently say that one was in my fridge on a very consistent basis.
Oh yeah,
like
that's what it's for. It's
hard for that beer.
It's a day in day out kind of.
And we had no idea. We made it because, like I said, I wanted to make it, and
we thought we'd be the only people drinking it.
Yeah, and it was like, this is a brewer's beer. We'll make one batch of it, and that'll be it.
Yeah.
And then we couldn't. The first batch, I think we sold out of a lot of the kegs before the tap room even opened.
Yeah.
And we were like, well, I guess we got to make it again. And then now it's still, I would say, our number one packaged beer. You don't really see it in the top 5 in the tap room unless it's fall. But it's always in that 7-8 kind of range.
Yeah.
So it always does well. It's just, I get that it's not a style people reach for. You know, I think lagers and IPAs always kind of dominate the tap room.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that ESBs and English Pale Ales are similar. So what differentiates them?
English Pale Ale, I would say, is a little hoppier.
A little hoppier, maybe a little lighter, like a little, not not that an ESB is thick, but I would say it's a little paler, a little lighter, and hoppier.
Yeah.
Does the bitter? Why does the bitter in the name? Is that because of hop content? What?
Yeah,
or
I mean,
is
that's historical English ales.
It's one of the oldest styles out there.
Yeah.
And back in the day, it was very bitter.
Oh, okay.
But I think you've seen over beer's life and the development of IPAs, beers are now a lot more bitter than they used to be. And so I think that was back in the day, it probably was one of the more bitter options. Yeah. But now that beer has just evolved, and now that like humans have evolved, and now we're used to drinking like your hoppier IPAs, it doesn't really even fall in that category as a hoppy beer. I think you'd be shocked to have people call it like, wow, that's a hoppy beer. No, there's still hops. There's still hops in there.
How would you describe it then? How would you describe a pale ale versus an IPA? Or
I mean, just that, just like so with the ESB, super biscuity, and you're gonna get some floral notes and some earthy notes from English hops, and some kind of phenols from your yeast. But I think the pale ale version of what it would just be even more so on the hops, just up in the hop ratio, up in the bitterness. Maybe some later addition hops to make it the aroma a little more there.
Yeah, flavor and aroma would definitely be higher on the hop side.
I think you're looking at the difference kind of between like an amber and a pale ale, an American style amber and pale ale, but they're not even that far apart.
Yeah,
they're like even in between those styles. Because even an English pale ale isn't going to be anywhere close to like a Sierra Nevada pale. Okay, they're a little bit. I'd say they are maltier and not as hoppy. Is what an English is. That's always what I think of English pale ales and IPAs versus American. You're going to rely on a more bready, biscuity English malt bill. Your hops are also going to be different, but not as prevalent as IPAs. Yeah, Americans. I mean, you talk about it in our brown ale too. A brown ale, American versus an English brown ale. American brown ales are a little lighter, right. And they're not as biscuity because American malt just is not that. And then they're hoppier because that's just what Americans do. We like to add hops to shit.
Yeah. Well, and the first pale ale I ever had was a Weinhardt's. Speaking of West Coast, Weinhardt's pale ale, and I remember like having never had anything before. Yeah. Like, whoa, this is really bitter.
Yeah.
And pale ales now are not quite that bitter.
Yeah.
But
and I'm sure your palate has changed.
My palate has changed. I hope. Yeah, I hope so. So, what do you think as an IPA guy? And you have how many IPAs on tap now?
At the moment, probably at least 4.
Vaguely, Partial, Glorietta, Somewhere, Marginal Havoc.
Yeah, it's 5.
Did I say Glorietta? Yeah, 5. 5.
So they're all unique.
We've got to that's what I was going to ask. How do you set them apart? Obviously the hops and stuff, but you guys will know better. But then what explains the popularity of IPAs? I mean, people love that style.
I don't know, because I think they in beer are definitely the most. They're definitely the most polarizing.
They're very. Yeah,
because I think you have a lot of people that are like, I'll never drink IPAs. They're too much. Which, like, to a point, I get. I was there when I was younger.
Yeah.
One of my best friends says he doesn't want to drink a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, glass. He doesn't like.
But as far as like, we try and do like IPAs are obviously one of the more popular styles. I mean, you look at the growth of cans and craft beer last year. The biggest growth was double IPAs, triple IPAs.
Is that across the market or Chicago specific?
Across the market.
I think that's nationwide.
Yeah, I mean, that was especially, I mean, the big leads of that last year were like, in the past 2 years, were like Goose and New Belgium.
Well, and I think one of the things too with beer styles is like, we call it the barbecue fest philosophy, and that's nothing makes a line like a line. And for IPAs, it's kind of that, like, nothing creates buzz more than people want it. Like, they want the thing, but then they're like, wait a minute, why does that guy want it? I want it now. Wait, that guy wants it. I want it now. Yeah. And, like, nothing makes a line quite like a line.
Exactly,
and, like, you just want to get in on the thing,
and it's hard to say what started the line, but, like, you're exactly right. Why do Americans love hops? I don't know. Yeah.
Right. But they do.
Yeah.
Well, and
maybe
it's
breweries-
trend chasing too, right? And it's like, all right, well, if I go to my neighbor's house and my neighbor is serving these kinds of beers and I don't want to be a dick, then I'm going to go ahead and drink what my neighbor's got. And then, oh, well, now I like this thing. And it just kind of spreads.
Yeah.
But I don't know that the American palate is necessarily built for all of the hops that we put in our beers. But I do think it's interesting to see palates change as like a population ages, right? Because as you get older, your palate changes and you can handle bitterness in different ways on your palate. Like your palate dries out. You don't
as we get
necessarily
older, we're
need
a
the
bit more
sweetness
bitter
that
in
you
our
used to need.
soul.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
the bitterness comes from inside, and then we can consume more bitter things too.
Your bitterness comes from inside.
No, my bitterness is caused by external
yours definitely
forces.
is on the surface, Catherine.
My bitterness? It's right here. I wear it
it's
right
all
here.
right. There's nothing to hide. You're not
Cody?
hiding it.
Cody always likes to sample the dealer's choice, whatever the brewer has, because sometimes Cody, he's behind the camera, he feels left out, he doesn't get to drink, but he loves a good beer. What do you think of the ESB?
Catherine can't taste it because she's not here. I
said Cody.
have to do it.
You have to taste it
Yeah.
for Catherine.
I'm taking one for the team
Yeah.
here.
All right,
It's the Lord's
listen.
work you're doing. We appreciate it.
It's like, is grainy a thing you're allowed to use? Grainy, like earthy, kind of?
Earthy would be
I
how
would
the
go-
hops are
yeah.
described.
It's
Yeah.
better than
Earthy is
grainy.
better than, I don't know.
I would say grainy is more of a texture thing.
Okay.
I would say malt. If you're like malty, maybe is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, I don't know. There's because I don't drink a lot of hoppy beers, so what I'm tasting is not a thing I'm used to describing, which is why I'm struggling with the. If I'm having like a bourbon barrel aged beer, I'm like, yeah, it's maple syrup and chocolate and soy sauce.
soy sauce.
But
Soy
there's,
sauce. Yeah.
there's some strong flavor like that kind of is just pervasive through the whole sip. It's really good.
I think it's like with ESBs, you're typically getting a lot of malty. Like when I say like especially English malts, very biscuity, bready, hearty on the malt side, and then the hops are very different from American hops in that they're very, like I said earlier, floral and earthy. Which I think people think earthy and they're like dirt, and you're like, just no, it's hard to describe, but it's just like it's go outside and go into nature and smell what it tastes and smell it. And I think nature smells good, and that's kind of what I get out of the taste.
This is wonderful. One of the things, like with ESBs, and one of the things I've even said about your ESB and all, it's like if there's something unsweetened tea with it, like it's that kind of bitterness. It's that kind of like it's that unsweet,
I
strong
see where you're going there. Yeah.
sense that you get. It's that earthiness from like unsweet tea that brings some of that bitter. That's what I get from it. But yeah, I mean, go outside and smell nature. Like go into the woods and take a deep sniff.
I think ESBs are one of the reasons I like them is because they blend both hops and malt very well. I think a lot of styles of beer, you rely on, this is a hoppy beer, or this is like a super malty, like a malt bomb of sorts. And I think ESB, and I think English beers, like the English pale, and even if you look at like American, like ambers and like kind of hoppier American ambers, they do a very good job of blending and not letting one side shine more than the other. Like I said, West Coast IPAs, there's still a blend of it in all IPAs, but they're definitely relying a lot more on the hop flavor. The malt and is more of is still there, but it's not as.
I think
it's
that's
not an even split.
That's part of why it's hard to describe, because like I don't think like hoppy at all when I drink it, but I don't think malty at all. So it is that it's a unique blend. There aren't a lot of beers that have that.
If I may
Not a lot of ESBs in
paraphrase,
Chicago.
No, they're not.
yeah, no, there aren't.
Yeah.
I'd like to paraphrase, if I may, the Supreme Court on their pornography decision. I don't know why I
you're right.
like it.
No, you're right.
I don't know why I like it, but I like it.
Are you talking about porn or the
I
beer?
was gonna say, wait a minute.
Are we talking about what we're paraphrasing? I might have missed that.
I can't. They say I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it. So like this, I can't define the ESB, but I know I like it when I taste it.
All right.
Listen, I'm bringing a little history to the show. Bring a little.
I mean,
current
this
events.
is a ruling that
Current
this
events.
very long time ago.
Decision season.
it is. I
decision
tied it in,
season,
Cody.
yeah.
Don't let it go.
That was in our broadcast journalism history classes. Let's be honest.
Yes, we all heard that decision, and I said I was paraphrasing. Nobody's sending me on big cruises. I don't have
Great job.
an RV. I'm just whatever. All right, This is the time when we ask our brewers the same 3 questions. Every brewer has been asked the same questions. We will ask you too. Please don't copy each other's answers. Cover your sheet, and here we go.
Okay.
The first question is the hill you will die on, meaning a style that may be wildly popular. It may be something that people are clamoring for, but for whatever reasons, moral, ethical, good taste, you will not brew. It's Cameron.
Oh, that we will not brew.
That you will not. This one you just will not.
I mean, we already talked about earlier that I'm, in violation of the Brewers Code by not liking bourbon barrel aged stouts.
Okay.
But a beer that we will not brew. I would like. This will not shock Tim, and you can't steal my answer because I bet it's going to be similar.
You can't. Well, you know what mine is.
I would like to stop trying to make Belgian beer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why? What makes Belgian beer?
There's something about it that just does not tickle my fancy. I don't like it, and I will say that I think the ones that we have made here have been okay at best.
Wow. Okay.
But I'm also not the right person to taste them and try them because
I give Cam the Belgian one of the beer when we make a Belgian beer. I'll give it to Cam and he tastes it. And he goes, "Yeah, it tastes like a Belgian beer." I'm like, "You're useless."
Yeah, useless. yeah. Is this how it's supposed to taste?
I guess.
Well, you got the recipe's right. Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's my hill. It's just
all right. No more Belgians if you had your druthers.
Yeah,
we'll still make them.
We're still making them. I'm going to lose that fight.
You're going to lose the fight.
We're not going to be a Belgian brewer anytime soon, but we'll throw Belgian options out there. Unfortunately, unlike Cam, other people like to drink them.
What about you?
That's good.
Milkshake IPAs will never be made here.
Yes.
That answer.
There it is.
You wouldn't be surprised
There
how
it
many
is.
brewers said that same thing.
I did my time and never again.
Okay.
We've not made one here. Tim has he has evolved a little bit. In early days, he said he would never make one, and now he says if we decide to make one, he's just gonna have nothing to do with it.
I said that with the seltzer too.
Yeah,
but the seltzer was more about like I don't like seltzers.
Yeah.
And so part of our MO here was like we make things we like.
There you go.
And Cam and I aren't big seltzer fans, so it's like why would we make a seltzer? And we brought on our lead brewer Kevin, and he's like seltzers, and he homebrewed them, and we're like, here you go. This is you.
I like that you have plausible deniability.
Exactly.
To styles you don't like.
Yep.
Hey, I didn't have anything to do with it. I was over here. I was on
Cam
vacation.
Cam sits there when we're making Belgians, and he writes down the recipe and gives it back to us. It's mostly me and Kevin coming up with the recipe.
There you go. Yeah.
It's like, here you go.
All right, question number 2. A beer that you have brewed, and it might have done really well, and you might have liked it, but for whatever reason, you're not going to do it again.
I mean, the best answer I have to that's probably our Holstein Helles. But it's not that we're not going to bring it back. It's just a beer that just never really did what we thought it was going to do.
A lot of people like it. We tried.
It's kind of an Americanized Helles lager.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little darker, a little breadier than your typical German. But yeah, a lot of people like it. People ask for it back, but like can-wise, never did great. It never did great in like competitions just because it doesn't really quite follow a competition style guideline.
Okay.
Like I think we sent that to like a couple competitions first 2 years we were open, and every time we got info back and it was like great beer, not stylistically correct.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it's like
all right.
it's just kind of it's weird.
And we like it, and the people who request it love it.
Sure.
It just doesn't sell that well overall.
Well, yeah, and
you know?
see, that's the problem, I guess. That
Yeah.
you're like, well, this is a good beer. Why isn't it doing better? And you're just like, okay, well, we're going to move on from that. All right, final question. Off the clock. Could be one of yours. Could be something else. Your go-to desert island beer.
Modelo.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Regular or Negra?
Regular.
Regular.
Yeah.
Okay.
Miller Lite.
Miller Lite.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's very popular.
I'm a creature of habit, man.
Yeah.
It's just good drinking all the time, all seasons.
I like Miller. I'm always surprised that Brewers, like High Life is the Brewers beer. I don't know why it surprised me. It seems so, well, one, it's a, mass-produced big brewery.
You alluded to this earlier, but like you go to any beer festival and all the patrons are around there drinking all the heavy stuff, all the double IPAs, and it's like the best way to tell someone who actually works in the brewing industry is if they're drinking a Miller Lite.
Drinking a Miller Lite or a whiskey.
Absolutely,
Yeah, I found whiskey.
100%.
Part of it, and I've talked to some other brewers about this recently, is that sometimes it's hard to shut off your tasting brain.
Okay.
So when I'm drinking our beers or other people's beers, I'm always thinking, if I did this, how would I make it better? Or our beers I drink, how would I make them better?
This is a fabulous point,
I can
Mr.
drink a Miller
Ficken.
Lite, and I don't think twice about it. I enjoy it. I enjoy it for what it is.
There
It's
you go.
good.
Yep.
I can have it on the golf course, on the beach, on a rainy day, on a winter day, and I just enjoy
Are you
it. I don't
golfing?
think about it. Sometimes.
Really?
I'm not great, but
I'm learning so much.
I like to go outside, and it's a good excuse to go outside.
Are you also a substitute?
Is that
golf
also when
teacher?
you smell nature? When you go
Yes.
outside, you just
That's
smell
right.
nature
That's-
when you're on the
that's my
golf
nature
course?
smell. It's just the golf course.
Old guys in plaid pants.
Yeah.
All right, that's a good smell.
It's a unique
I guess.
smell.
Something's good. Well, gentlemen, thank you. This has been a lot of fun. We could talk forever. I wanted, real quick, your recycling program is something I haven't seen at other tap rooms. Yeah. Tell everybody what that is.
Yeah, so basically, I think the brewery who spearheaded it in Chicago is Half Acre.
So
okay.
Half Acre did it. I stole the idea from a bunch of breweries down in Atlanta that used to do it.
Okay.
Very nice.
But then when we started, that's when we found out about Half Acre does like the collection.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but basically, yeah. So we get you can bring in all your used pack techs, 6-pack, 4-packs, whatever, and limit one per day. We'll pour you a pint. As high as your stack goes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But then we'll collect those, and then whenever we get time, we'll drive them down to Half Acre, and then Pack Tech, the actual company Pack Tech that actually makes a majority of them, they will pick them up. And it's actually easier for them they will melt them down and reuse them, as opposed to when it goes into a recycle bin. One, it's got to get to a recycle facility,
Yeah.
and
Good luck.
that's who knows how often that happens. But then it's got to get there, and then can it get used at that certain facility or not? Can they melt it down or not? At least we know that, like, when it's going back to Pack Tech, they're using this plastic.
Yep.
It's melted down, and
Nice.
it's going right back into making more Pack Techs.
It's incredible work that you guys are doing with that program.
It's fun. I mean,
It is fun. And,
we did
yeah.
it was actually probably one of my favorite and least favorite Instagram. Actually,
It was wonderful. It was beautiful.
so we did a program around Earth Day and to Labor Day, and
it was Earth Day this year.
yeah.
Yeah.
Where we were just like, we want to collect as many as we can, and we were like, we want to get at least as tall as one of our tallest bartender and our shortest bartender. And we ended up with, like, I think it was, I don't remember how many feet it was, but it was a lot. It was like, we could have basketball teams of our tallest bartender. Like, we have a
lot of Pack Techs.
I got a full size,
That's
I got
amazing.
a full pallet of Pack Techs in the back. And then in our kind of celebration video, we knocked them all over,
Yeah.
made a
Very
big mess.
nice.
But yeah, I mean, it was a cool idea that I saw breweries doing back home. It's hard to, Pack Techs aren't great to reuse. I'm sure if people try to reuse them at home, you kind of notice the first time they're great, the second time they get a little loose, then they get looser. But knowing that they're able to go back and be reused, I mean, we talk about it. We're always looking for ways to just be more
More conscious about that sort of stuff. 'Cause
yeah,
we are
I
a
mean,
brewery and we can produce a lot of waste, and we know a lot of it though can be reused for a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of it's organic waste, which can easily have a second life.
mhm.
So
Well, it's
we're
very
always looking
cool.
for ways to do that. Yeah.
Very cool. Commendations. Or, I don't know, whatever. I'll throw the flowers. It's very commendable. I've had a few ESBs and the rest of my flight at half a dark. Anyway, Cameron Compton is the owner and the brewer here at Midwest Coast Brewing Company, and Timothy Ficken is the brewer and the brewery manager. And Midwest Coast Brewing Company, again, 2137 West Walnut Street in the Westtown neighborhood of Chicago. MidwestCoastBrewing.com. Come, bring your dog, bring your family. Come see this new. They just opened a beautiful second floor with an outdoor space that has an incredible view of the Chicago skyline. We're in one of the rooms upstairs. So if you want good beer and you want to come sit outside and you don't want to leave your dog at home and you have a kid that's always dragging you along, this is the place. This is it. So come to Midwest Coast. Thank you, guys. We really appreciate you
Thanks
being
for
here.
having us, man. It was fun.
Do we have a trend, Catherine?
You know what? We've kind of exhausted a lot of trends. We don't really have one today, but I did want to give you guys briefly, just some props for not chasing some of the trends that are in the beer world now. And for the past couple breweries that we've done, we've heard this. And I think it's really nice to hear people say, like, this is a thing that's out there in the world, but it isn't necessarily for us because we don't like it. And we know that it's not going to move at our space and we don't have to chase it. And that's great. And places that do want to chase it, more power to you. Like if you want to make all of the things, wonderful. But if you also just want to make beer because that's what you signed up for and that's the thing that you opened, then make the goddamn beer and just make it really good. And that is exactly what you guys are doing. So instead of like focusing on a trend, because at some point you run out of them, right? Like you just run out of them. We've explored a lot of them on the show, but I think right now, just the trend that I want to pay attention to today is being okay with not trend chasing. And I think that is commendable. And I am proud to know.
Did you notice how she rubbed that in my
both
face?
of you
that she could pronounce it
also-
correctly.
She could
Yeah,
pronounce
she
it,
said
yeah.
it right.
Catherine, I don't know. I heard girl beer is making a comeback.
They are. You know what, though? That's
Girl
the
beer.
trend we should chase.
Yeah,
I want
agree.
to listen. I'd chase a girl with a beer anytime.
I mean, that was one of the things that drew me to this place when talking to Cam, and I think we connected on it. And in my interview was just like, it was kind of like, what kind of beers do you want to make? And we had a conversation about craft beer when it started was about beer. It was about just bringing other styles from other countries to the U.S. And I think in that, and then developing American styles. And that, again, that's what we like to drink. And so that's why people ask us, we're never going to do this, we're going to do that. And we're like, I don't want to do that.
Maybe,
Like,
we might, but I don't know.
But
Yeah.
until I drink something enough that I'm like, damn, Cam, I think we should make this, or you say it, or Kevin, or our lead brewer, or Ryan, our GM, that are just like really hounding us to make something.
Okay.
I just, we kind of just want to make beer because we want to drink. It's what we want to drink.
Beer flavored beer?
Is
the Wi-Fi
it
password
because
still.
you're a brewery?
What is that?
Brewery? That's a place where you can go and you can drink beer and you can talk to people.
But I like what you said though about like there are other breweries that need to chase we sit in our realm and I think we're happy with it. We do need the other breweries to kind of chase those other styles because there are people that like that. It brings other people into beer.
Yeah.
And God bless them because I did that for a year and a half and it was something. It's just not what I wanted. It ultimately wasn't what I wanted to do. But I mean, there are plenty of breweries that make crazy ass shit and
they do great.
and it works and they do great.
And God bless them.
I mean, that's their whole thing.
Yep.
And we're just like, we'll just make just some regular plain old beer.
Bring
I
me
guess.
that brown ale, man.
Yeah.
I just want a solid brown ale all the time.
Yeah.
Yes, don't chase anything. Just make a solid brown ale.
Yeah.
No, that's what I got, Brian.
All right, very good. I know it doesn't fall under the weird ass shit category because we've heard of shandies many times, but you have a raspberry lemon shandy on the menu now that I had during the flight. It was it's nice because I think because it's only a 2.5, you could drink 160 of those.
Yeah. I mean,
basically. Yeah.
On a summer day.
That was a fun, weird beer that we made for Cam's gym, actually.
Yeah.
They wanted a light option, and they wanted like something
They
really
wanted it
light.
for an event that
Yeah,
they were
and it
putting
was
on. They
like-
wanted a keg or something.
Yeah, and we were like, what can we do that's like light? And like really light. And we're like, and we kind of like tossed our idea of the shandy. And so the first time we made it, small batch, like couple kegs, just a lemon shandy, and it was good and it did well. And we're like, we need a little more flavor to it. And so the next year last year, let's do raspberry lemonade. And so we made, it was like 100 gallons of raspberry lemonade.
That's
which-
always fun when that
It's a
day
great
because
day.
generally there's just a giant tank of raspberry lemonade floating around the
I'm not
brewery. So
gonna-
like,
we
There you
definitely
go.
we
That's all
definitely
right.
pour off some crawlers. I know one of our bartenders likes to bring a crawler home and make some gin drinks. We made some me and my girlfriend made some margaritas out of them.
That sounds good.
Kevin
Yeah.
and Tim like to do all the math. That's like this exact amount of lemonade with this exact amount of wheat ale, and it's like, yeah, but what about like 20 pints less of the lemonade because I'm going to be going
Yeah,
back to
yeah,
that
there's
pretty
that.
quickly. So is that still going to work?
No, we do it after we pour the after we
All
pour
right,
the crowlers. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was just fun. So like it's I don't think we ever intended to like keep it around. I think the first time we made it, it was kind of like a one-off thing, and then we're like, well, let's try it again with like a flavor, like more. So we added a bunch of raspberry puree to it, took some lemon out, and we're like, dang, that's actually kind of works, and we got good reviews from it. We made it a little late in the season last year.
Made it earlier this year, and it's been.
And we made it earlier. We've already made it twice this year.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like,
this is the perfect time for that, especially sitting outside now. On the
exactly. It's definitely a patio crusher
for sure.
Very nice. Well, gentlemen, thanks again. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer. Be sure to support your local breweries. Without your support, it's rough going for some of your favorite breweries. Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer is produced by award-winning producer Cody Goff. You can read our blog, grab some merch, check out episodes, and get in touch with us on our website, craftybrewerspod.com. And do you have a brewery that you'd like us to talk to? Or are you a brewer who would like to sit where Cameron and Timothy are sitting and share your knowledge and listen to my inane comments and my bad pronunciation of commendable? You can do that too. Send us a note, craftybrewerspod@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram. Catherine, what's all our social stuff?
All of our socials. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook, crafty_brewers_pod on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook, Crafty Brewers, Tales Behind Craft Beer. We are right there. The other thing that is super important to mention is that if you like the show and if you're listening to the show, please go ahead and figure out how to share what you are listening to with your network of people. I guarantee you that if your friends want to see what you had for dinner, they also want to know what you're listening to. So tell them.
Very good. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Cody says, please tap your phone and give us a 5-star rating. Is that correct, Cody? 5 stars.
That seems nice.
That does
5.
seem nice.
Not 4 or 3, but 5.
No, 5 is the only way. We're
5 stars only.
If you saw the work that Cody put in, give him 5 stars. Anyway.
Don't treat Apple Podcasts like you treat Untapped, basically.
Never do that. Untapped is the devil.
We have 3 more hours to talk about Untapped.
We can talk
Good
about
bad.
I love Untapped.
Now we've scratched the surface. Now there's the trend. Thanks again to Cameron Compton and Timothy Ficken from Midwest Coast Brewing Company for being with us. For Crafty Brewers Tales, but what?
Do we have any featured merch?
Well, we have merch. I'm wearing I feel like a billboard. I came in. I will say this. I came in today and I didn't see Timothy sitting at the end of the bar. So I went up and I ordered a flight. And after the bartender brought it to me, I said, are Timothy or Cameron here? Because we're here to do the podcast. He looked at me and he goes, yeah, I kind of figured. So
can we also feature our hats? I'm like screaming. Can we also?
Yes, I'm wearing one of the hats.
Let's do our hats.
The Crafty Brewers hat.
Look at that.
A couple of hats with hops with the radio signal going through there. And I have the OG label, the OG logo on the T-shirt. So yeah, I'm branding it up. That's what we do. If you want to do that, it's at craftybrewerspod.com. And for Crafty Brewers, that's Katherine Vallow.
Still.
Valio?
He's Brian Noonan.
All right, what else you got to say?
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, baby.
Cheers. See ya.